Hey everyone, Sycra here, and welcome to another episode of the Psychological Problems podcast. Today, I'm joined by Flavia.
Hello.
And once again, Bob's not here. We have explained why Bob's not here, Bob Meatbag. But it seems I still get concerned people asking me, is Bob all right? Where's Bob? So for those people, don't be concerned. Bob's in Vancouver. We're in a town called Princeton, which is about 3 hours-ish away from Vancouver. So Bob's okay. He was supposed to be with us in Princeton, but he's been having a hard time finding a place here. The housing seems quite limited. It's only a town of like 2,000 people, so it's not like it's super busy or anything. It's not. And also renting is quite expensive, although buying a house is not.
Yeah, it's a mining town, so most of the people who are looking for rent are here for jobs of...
Yeah, and temporarily. They'll come, they'll work for a few years and then they'll leave.
So rent is pretty much double a mortgage-ish.
Yeah, well, it's double our mortgage, so...
Even on average.
Yeah. So that's the thing. We're still, hoping he'll come by again. For a while, he was staying with us, so that's why that was working. And then we thought he had a place.
Yeah.
And it turns out, we're waiting on it, and they're like, okay, we're renovating this suite above our restaurant, and it's going to be available this month. And then, no, it's going to be available in the next month. And then, okay. And then... right at the last minute, like the day before we're supposed to go to Vancouver and pick up Bob, we found out, actually, they're not allowed to actually have, they don't have a permit for renting a place. So that sucks. But hopefully things will recover. And I'm sure Bob is very touched by all the people who think about him so frequently.
In very inappropriate places.
Yeah. I guess. So, speaking of quiet, sleepy towns where not much happens, I thought, Flavia actually thought we could talk a little bit about timelines. So, why don't you go ahead and explain?
Yeah, so basically our main idea for moving to such a town was that we wanted a quiet, peaceful enough place that would allow us to sort of enter a cocoon state and develop in terms of art and in terms of, I guess even our psychology, away from all the pressure and or at least away from most of the pressure.
Plus the financial pressure is much less.
Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot, just browsing places like Instagram or DeviantArt or Facebook, or everything's so crunched in terms of people's subjective timelines. When you're browsing a feed, it feels like a lot of stuff is happening at once, and you feel like, you need to match that up, kind of like how you listen to fast beat on your, MP3 player. Do people still use that?
They use their phones mostly.
Yeah. So you'll listen to a fast tune and then you'll feel the need, your body will feel the need to adjust. So when you're looking at like everybody drawing, everybody posting pictures and like sort of having an incentive to post yourself and do more, and you can very, very easily burn out on one hand, and then secondly, deliver worse quality than you would like, which sort of piles up into this sort of feeling of feeling depressed and feeling discontent and stuff. And after moving to Canada, I pretty much was left without real quote unquote food. So what I started to do was I got like seeds and mini plants and whatever, and I started growing vegetables on our balcony. And I remembered being in the countryside and just going through the seasons, and time seemed much more dilated in a way. It seemed like, well, you've got spring, but spring is like 3 months. in the course of a spring, there's so much going on. There's so much happening. There's so much, you don't, every week I have to do something. Every week I have to do a new thing and start a new thing. And when you're dealing, especially with a garden, everything's very, oh, you have to wait. You have to remember how to wait and remember that things take time and remember some sort of, I guess, primitive wisdom type of thing. I guess it sounds a bit, I don't know, old-timey and stuff, but it really does help to remind me of, wait a minute, I'm not in the rat race, because it's very easy to forget. Even here in a town such as Princeton, it's very easy to forget that years go by, but a year is just a revolution of a few seasons. You will do things in that year if you're just doing things day by day. It's not like, oh, look to the left, look to the right.
Yeah, there's so much stimuli, especially when it comes to, I suppose even this podcast is kind of one version of that, where you may be lost and you need some direction. And what you find are a bunch of voices from different places, and sometimes it's just whichever voice you happen to resonate with is the one you stick to. And it's like, okay, what do they say? Because what do I do? Where do I go?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, here's what I'm doing, and go here, and this is what I'm doing, and then it creates this feeling of like, okay, so I guess I have to do that too. I have to be here, and I have to do that.
Yeah.
And even little things like what is art? In the circles I went to anyway, things were very revolving around the entertainment industry. So TV, or like TV shows, movies, games, what else? Comics, I guess. But it was all this like industry thing, and it seemed like art is that. So art is working as a number of jobs you could have within this industry. And I didn't always think this way, but I started to just, I guess I would hear from people, and I would like art done by really good artists, because it's just like that was skillfully done.
Yeah.
And the really good artists tended to be working in these fields. I mean, not always, but a lot of them were. And so it's like, okay, so I want to see good art, and the good art is attached to this person who is in this field, who is part of this world. So art became that. But with you, Flavia, you're doing pet portraits, and that's a very, very different world. And it sort of was eye-opening, like, okay, you can make money off art. It sounds kind of bad, but you can make a living as an artist without being in the industry.
Yeah. I guess in a way it is sort of like an industry, but it's much less centralized than the entertainment industry. It's much more, at most, I suppose you would, if you're a high level, whatever, you'd have an agent. Mm-hmm. But it's not, oh, you're working on a franchise, in a company, with a team, in-house, all of these terms that are very, I don't know, they're not really that personal, are they? With a pet portrait thing, it's much more about, I suppose it's about painting the pet portraits, but it's actually talking to the people. That's the more, I don't know, the more taxing part of the job. And I guess in that way, it is sort of like an industry. It is sort of like, networking, but it's a very different type of networking. And because there's so much emotion involved with, okay, somebody who commissions me to paint their pet is very emotionally attached to that animal. So when I say something like, well, it's going to take me a while to paint this portrait because I want to do a good job, they will be happy to hear that I want to do a good job rather than I want it now, tomorrow, the next week, 2 hours, and stuff like that. It's much more about, it's much easier to convey the idea of quality when it's one person to another than when you're in a scheme, I don't know, I guess a pyramid, corporation, whatever company you're working for.
Yeah, like, I mean, at the end of the day, I suppose they're still clients, but there's like, okay, so for example, we volunteer at a local art gallery, and we both put up some work there, and I put up some, like, I did some prints there on of stuff that's on DeviantArt and whatever, because it's just like, whatever, I don't have too much time. I'm trying to take up like traditional painting, but that kind of stalled because we found out we don't quite have the space, and anyway, it's whatever, it's on hold. But so I did put up some paintings, and I had done this picture of Jakar, a character from a TV show from the 90s called Babylon 5. It's this sci-fi show. And it was just because Flavia likes this character.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked him too. But anyway, so there's a Jakar in the gallery. And then some guy...
outright bought it.
Some weeks later, he saw it and he bought it. And then he wanted Londo and other characters from the same show because he really liked the show. It's like, okay, fine. But it's kind of weird because it's so different than what I normally have, which is I put my work out. I have my portfolio. And then if someone looks through the portfolio and wants my services, they kind of do it. But it's not really personal. It's not like I know. It's more, a company needs your services to fulfill this thing. And that's okay. That's fine. But it was very different where it's just like, a guy likes this show.
Yeah, and he walks in and you meet him and then he's like, oh yeah, I really like it.
Yeah. It's just different, and it made me think about, there's other things. And I started noticing with some of my students actually for a while now, not all of them, because a lot of them do want to be in the industry. I guess like the capital I industry is the Hollywood. Well, not like everywhere's it's all in Hollywood, but it's not that centralized anymore. But it's a thing. And with some of my students, though, they're really good in a certain thing, but it's not like you wouldn't be a concept artist. Like maybe they do a really funny comic, and the comic's not super well, like doesn't have correct anatomy or whatever, but it's really just, it's nice. It's a fun story.
Yeah, it's fun to read. It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's got the effect.
Yeah, like it accomplishes what it needs to.
Yeah.
And then I think of it and I think like, okay, if this was drawn better, would I like it more? And the answer is no, not really. Like it's fine. It's fine for what it is. And it really makes me think about art in a different way because I guess for myself, I really got into the skill thing. I really got obsessed with skill. And I still, to a point, I would say I am. And skill is certainly important, but there's all these other things around skill which are just as important or more important. And probably the most important thing is your ideas, what you bring to the table. And second to that, I suppose, is your skill. But it's not the only thing. So
and it seems so sad that it's usually the first thing that flies out the window is remembering why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, because it's so, especially when you keep hearing the same things over and over again.
It's conditioning, I suppose.
Yeah, you kind of get a sense of like, okay, this is what good is, and this is what I have to be, and it's very easy to forget. The other things I want to talk about. So there's skill, and there's ideas, but there's also marketing, networking, like the whole business side of it. So like you could be really good as an artist, but not social at all, and you don't know how to communicate, and then it's really quite, especially in the industry, it's really easy to lose everything. Because let's say you work for someone and you just have a bad attitude. Like maybe you're good technically, but they have a bad experience. And you work under an art director who then happens to talk to other art directors, because usually that's the case. I mean, a lot of times you have very small circles, and then suddenly no one wants you because they know you're hard to work with. And you could have spent like, I don't know, 10 years working your ass off on getting skill so you could be in this position. And now you're in a position where you have all that skill, but you don't have social skills or, just people skills. And so nobody really wants you. And you can see the reverse of that, where you might have someone who's not that good, and you might even see their work and think, like, how are they professional? I could do better than that. I've heard this type of thing a lot. Like, I could do better than this person. I could do better than that person. And it's sure, maybe skill-wise, but maybe that's not why they were hired. Maybe it's their ideas are really good, or maybe it's they're very good to work with. Maybe they're very just like they meet their deadlines on time. They've been around forever. Everyone knows what they're gonna get when they hire this person.
Yeah, it seems like predictability is very, very important.
Yeah.
Just being predictable. And it's weird to me how those values in terms of personality traits are kind of reversed when it comes to fine art.
Yeah.
Like, if you are good, technically speaking, but the technical parts are a bit strange in fine art, and you're a recluse, or you don't get along, or you're very difficult and stuff, your rating's actually probably going to go up, because the image that you should be projecting is the...
I would say there is a caveat to that, though, and it's that you usually have representation from someone else who isn't that.
Yeah.
So
you're very, very reliant on your manager.
Yeah, manager or an agent or any other sort of representative to smooth over that. So it's like, okay, you don't deal with the artist directly because they're this crazy person who does their work.
Like you still need enough people skills to get somebody to represent you.
Yeah.
You need to sort of know.
Yeah, or at least you need to be out there enough for someone to find you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of sobering, I guess, to think about these things. Like, oh yeah, you might think, how do I become an artist? Well, there's the fundamentals. And once I get the fundamentals down, I will be an artist. And it's, in skill, yes. But will you be a professional artist? Not necessarily. And for me, one of the hardest things is this predictability thing.
Yeah.
Because I am not predictable, and I try to be. I really am trying. I'm really like the whole point of my pointy chins thing. So I'm gonna dissect. I've probably told this story before, but for maybe newer viewers or listeners who haven't heard this, when I started Pointy Chins, it was because I looked through my portfolio and my gallery, and I saw a bunch of work, and I didn't really see any work that I liked. And by that I mean, whenever I would look at work, artwork by people, I always knew which ones I liked. I could see a feed of a bunch of images, and it's like, I really like this one, or I kind of like this one, and then I save it into my folder of whatever you probably do as well, have folders full of artists' work or whatever, library. And I thought about, would I save my work? And the answer was really no. And at this time, I was doing okay in terms of getting work, but I wasn't really enjoying my own work. And when I looked at other people's work, the ones I would save, one thing I saw was that, one, they had a very strong voice. Like, there was this really, they do themselves. They really do justice to their own work. They're an individual. They are not just a copy-paste of someone else. And usually when I would see the copy-paste versions, I wouldn't like them for that. It's like, you're like this person, but worse. I don't like you. But yeah, it was this understanding that, okay, fine, I don't like what I see, but what do I like? And answering that was really difficult. So what I started doing is, well, I was already actually doing this with Bob Meatbag. We would have these Google Hangout sessions where it was actually open. A bunch of friends were there. Cynics was there. Jetty Jet was there. Ricardo Costa. Just some other people. Like, it was an open hangout that people could come in and out of. And I know there's some Discord server things like that now. And there are other hangouts going on all the time that are pretty much, I guess, what we were doing as well.
We're so out of the loop.
Yeah. But anyway, I was doing this stuff, and it wasn't until I did a retrospective of my studies that I had been doing for however long that I got in the comments. People were commenting like, oh, this is okay, but you're all over the place. You lack direction. And this feeling of, okay, you lack direction, and then I myself thinking I don't like my work. And then on top of that, understanding the people whose work I do like have direction, like very, very strong direction. They're not the way I was. And the way I was really like, I got to learn everything. If there's a fundamental, I need to master it. And what I would see in their work is not necessarily a mastery of the fundamentals. It was they had enough of what they needed to make work that did whatever they wanted it to. So, for instance, I really like the work of Hyung Tae Kim, and you may have seen his work. I think he did Blade and Soul stuff. And anyway, it's these super
long-legged.
Yeah, super long leg, super exaggerated figures, and they are pretty broken anatomy-wise. And I don't think that's like super outrageous. Oh my god, shots fired or whatever. No, it's they're broken anatomy-wise. A lot of them are pretty broken. So what I did is I took some of the works I liked by him, and I tried to redraw them with correct anatomy, and it just didn't look good. It was much worse. And I actually tried this before with Frank Frazetta as well, because in animation school we were learning about gesture and pushing the pose and having rhythm and sort of always push. And you would see work by artists or animators like artist and animator Glenn Keane, and he really pushes. I was like, okay. So I took all these ideas and I tested them against Frank Frazetta, and it seemed like he doesn't really push them. Like there's it's not quite flowing as well as an animator would make it flow. These could be revised. So it's like, okay, let's try that. So I did a study of his work and said, yeah, that looks good. All right, now let's push it and make it cool like an animator would. And it wasn't. It lost it. And I didn't understand at the time, but now I can look back and I would tell my younger self, you see what you've got. He has tension in his work. And a lot of this tension is coming because there is a stiffness that is present, and it makes a very good image. But it's not like animation school. When we went to animation school, they didn't tell us to do like this. They said, don't make it stiff. You see? You must make it stiff. Actually, some part should be stiff. Underneath is gesture. But there is also gesture in straight lines. There is also tension that is apparent in reality. So when you think only in abstract, too much abstract, your mind is in the clouds, then you can lose some of the basics that you see in reality. But when you see a body, like you've seen a body, you have a body, others may also have a body, and you see this body, then you can understand, you can start to, okay, I relate to this, yeah, I feel that muscle in my own arm, I know what that looks like, the anatomy is there, it's exaggerated, sure, but the tension, I feel it, that is based in physics. So then I know, okay, that's what I've got to go for. So not only think about abstracts. And for me, it was very difficult because I would always think about a thing and then push it to its natural conclusion. So I think about pushing a pose, and then I think about, okay, what is the ultimate form of pushing this pose? And then I will spend weeks, not on that one pose, but on that idea of like, okay, push, push, push. How far can you push? No, this is a dynamic shape. If someone showed me a shape, and like, this is a dynamic shape, when I look at it, I'll think, no, okay, that's a dynamic shape. But is it the most dynamic version of that shape? Or could
completely forgetting.
Yeah, or could you make it even more dynamic? And so with this mindset, I approached, I don't like my work, let me find a style. So the first thing I started doing is just drawing as I normally draw, but trying to make it things that I like. And I wasn't really sure what I liked because I never really thought about it. I never thought, I have tastes, I have preferences. And one of the reasons I actually had this not knowing, because I used to know what I liked, but I kind of would see work that I thought was shit and then later find out, oh wait, it's not, it's good. And I would have these humbling experiences over and over again. And then I just started to really appreciate quality in whatever form it was. So I wasn't looking at, is this something I like? I was just thinking, is this good? And it would be, oh yeah, this is really good. And I would be super enthusiastic about pictures that maybe it's just flowers, a still life or something. And it's just like, I don't care about flowers. I don't really like flowers that much. Like I don't have anything against them. They haven't really hurt me yet. But there's like, yeah, okay, sure. It's whatever. But, the brush strokes, the colors, the way, the way you did it. The textures are so great, so masterful. And then it becomes this thing of like, wow, this is a great piece. This artist really captured the flowers. The edge work is awesome. The technique, very few brush strokes, nothing unnecessary. Bravo. A great piece is this. And by doing that over and over again, it's like, oh wow, I would look at a piece that's like, do you like it? Wasn't really the thing that would come to my head anymore. It was like, oh wow, this is great gesture, or wow, this is great line work. That's really good. I applaud that. That is something I don't have. Or this is very good presentation. This is really good design. And this type of thinking, I suppose, it helps on one hand in that you're more humble. You're less likely to say, oh, this person's good, this person's bad, or this person would destroy you. You think you're good, you're not good. This person's much better than you.
But why do you think the second question just disappeared?
What do I like?
Yeah. Do I like it? Like, okay, this piece is good.
I guess I learned to not trust what I liked, because what I liked got me into the whole ignoring skill thing.
Wouldn't the natural conclusion be to dial it back instead of excluding it?
I suppose that would be the natural conclusion.
The natural conclusion?
It's not natural. Not at all. So, yeah. So then I was thinking, okay, what do I like? And I would do some drawings. And then I did some with like pointier faces. The eyes were sharp and pointy. And the chins were pointy. The nose was kind of maybe rounded, maybe pointy. I don't know. The shoulders were rounded. And it's like, okay. I looked at the picture and it's, out of this, what do I like? And I thought, I kind of like how the chin's pointy. I kind of like how the eyes are pointy. And whatever. So I was just like, okay, so let me keep doing the things. I thought, okay, fine. I don't know what I like. And part of this is also my dissociative problems. I've gone over this before. But for people who aren't aware, I have a dissociative identity disorder. And this means like there's not just one me, I guess. There's
personality.
A bunch.
Yeah.
And because of that, because of what happened with my life, I kind of fragmented in a way that I don't know myself, or I don't know parts of myself. I can't talk to them. I don't have access to memories. Like, I will remember things, but only when I am in the exact situation.
Yeah.
So something happened, I guess it was about a year ago, a little under a year ago, but for a long time I hadn't met this aunt of mine from England. And I didn't remember anything about her, really. But as soon as I was talking to her, like I was in the same room and I was talking to her, I suddenly remembered like all this stuff, just tons of information that it's like even now I don't know that information, but at the time I did. And it's because whenever I'm in a situation, my brain will switch back into whatever the last version was of that situation. So
yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah, you've got to witness it a bunch of times.
Yeah, but I got to witness it sort of you being sort of in between states, because when I'm around, it's a different it's a different pull.
And depending on who I talk to, my accent changes, my vocabulary changes.
Yeah.
A lot changes.
A lot changes.
And I also have this thing of mirroring.
So
I tend to mirror people I'm around a lot.
That's what happens when you put dissociative disorder with somebody who's socially apt in terms of understanding emotion and stuff. Oh, you can mirror. Got a new skill.
Yeah.
Level up.
The problem is I forget them.
Yeah.
I forget like basic things. Anyway.
Yes.
So that's I don't remember the point, but there was a point.
That you don't know yourself.
Right. I don't know myself.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. So because of that, it was really just, okay, draw a picture, look at it, and then look at what you like, keep that, and then look at what you don't like and change that. So I would draw a picture, and I would draw a picture, and draw a picture. And on one of these occasions, Cynics was also present, and he had said that, pointy chins is not a style. And I was like, okay. Because it was annoying because I got it, like I get his point, but it was also like, well, I know I'm not trying to make pointy chins as it's the only thing I know that I like right now, but it wasn't that. It was like the eyes were sharp. I knew I liked that. The hair was sharp. But other than that, I had no clue why. And it was a case of, okay, so fine, copy that. And I named my journey Pointy Chins in Cynics' honor. Sort of as making fun of myself a little bit, self-deprecation, to show, oh, pointy chins will be a style. I'll show you, Cynics.
Should have had it as a subtitle. I'll show you, Cynics.
Yeah, you're still not very good.
Yeah. And then
you just need to be more confident. You don't need all this style thing.
Yeah, dissociative identity disorder isn't really a thing.
I don't know. I don't have problems with my memory. Anyway, so that's what it became. It was just, okay, find something and try and focus on what I like. But the problem is I still have other me's, and the different parts of me each like different things. And so what would happen is I would think I like something, and then I would feel like a very strong pull towards disliking it. Sometimes I would just forget how to draw, and then I could only draw in a different style. I mean, this has happened a lot, especially recently.
Yeah.
Where my style keeps changing. And it's like, oh, at one time, everything is stretched and long, and then other times it's all squished. Sometimes it's more detailed, sometimes it's super simplified. And yeah, what did help, though, is... recently I've been trying to educate Flavia in the greatness that is 90s JRPGs. So I've shown her Xenogears. We got through Final Fantasy 7, 6, 7, Xenogears, Chrono Trigger. We're working on tactics.
we're hard at work.
But
we said we moved to Princeton to like develop an art and stuff.
Yeah, well, so the plus side of showing her these things, for me anyway, is because I'm not like a part of me doesn't come out unless I'm engaged in a certain activity.
Yeah, triggers.
Like unless they're triggered, but in a different way than they're triggered. Classic contemporary use of that word. It doesn't arise, and so what I saw is like, oh, all the things I like are in these things.
Yeah, it was
particularly
very
Final Fantasy VII and Xenogears.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, oh, these are my, I guess, art.
Yeah, we were playing it, and it's like, oh wait, this character has your hair. Oh no, wait, this character has your hair too.
Yeah. Yeah, but then my work started turning into Xenogears. It was just...
Yeah, because at the time, that's what we were playing.
And then... Okay, so then that's... okay, so now I'm going into that, and I guess I like this. But then I get pulled into a different thing. So it's a lot of trying to figure out who I am and what I am. And...
When you are who you are.
Yeah. It's actually really depressing and annoying. I'm joking about it and stuff, but it actually really sucks. Because I don't have any control over it. And there's this feeling of I don't know what I am. I don't have my memories. I'm not multiple the way I used to be in that I don't have... It used to be that all the voices are there, all the personalities, I can talk to them in my head. Not me, because I never had that, but parts of me that did have this. It was kind of like a room, this black room, and it's got a domed ceiling, and then there are these figures, and each figure is a different personality, and it used to be like that. And then they all went away, and it's just me, but I don't have parts. Like there's a bunch of missing things. One of the things that's missing is my memory or memories, certain memories. And then another part that's missing is I can't communicate with any of them. And they don't tell me stuff. And I don't know. So trying to work out things is very difficult. And stuff I guess it's... Like it's a psychological problems podcast, so I'm talking about my psychological problems, but I don't really know if this means anything to anyone. Like, I feel it's irrelevant, so it's hard for me to bring it up, because it's like, well, what's anyone going to get from this? Other than, oh, it is hard for you to draw.
I don't know, really? I feel like we've heard quite a few times, like, oh, I don't really know what I want, and I think I remember at least one occasion where I asked somebody, well, what do you want to do? And they didn't know.
Yeah.
So, wait, whether it's because you dissociate or because you really aren't used to asking that question of yourself, it's still valid, I think, to talk about.
Yeah, but I don't have much of an answer.
Yet.
Like... My thing is still, I don't know exactly what I am and what I want and what I like. I have clues. I have things that I know. I kind of like this and I kind of like that. But bringing it all together is it's been hard. And I get depressed a lot. But we've been trying to figure out ways of tackling certain depression. So for instance, we were eating, since moving here, because Flavia's from Romania, her palate is adjusted to that thing. And in Romania, they have good vegetables. They have good, their produce is pretty much good, as long as they're not, farming with a lot of pesticides. But if you know the right places to look, you can get very good food. And that's kind of the food Flavia is used to. So coming to North America, the food was pretty different. But it was also getting worse for me. And I think I've mentioned this. And so what we were starting to do is I was noticing I was getting these really bad mood swings.
Yeah.
I would just be like, I'd go into a rage for no reason, and I wouldn't know why, because nothing was really happening. Nothing was justifying me to be so upset. And then we started researching.
Yeah, that was alarming.
Like, I guess you started researching about xenoestrogen or something.
Yeah.
How there's all this stuff stuff in the food. So what we did was try to change our diet to things that don't have huge amounts of estrogen. We found out, like, even basic things like hand lotion or whatever, like just tons of stuff in North America has this. And I was kind of getting like man boobs. Like, just I was getting boobs that were starting to, like,
cleavage
droop. And that was horrible. So then anyway, so we completely changed the diet.
I was super depressed as well.
Yeah. We started introducing foods that are like anti-estrogen, I guess.
Low estrogen, yeah.
Low estrogen foods.
Yeah.
And that's helped. So I don't have this super bad mood issue.
And I had these cravings. And the weird thing is, not weird, I guess it's to be expected, but recently I've eaten like a fast food thing again. And sure enough, the day after, I started getting these stupid cravings again where I've eaten. I'm not actually hungry, but I feel like eating. And then, okay, so we go to the store to get like supplies and stuff. And I'm looking at things I don't normally care about. Like we went how many times to the supermarket, and I don't even know what's in certain aisles because I never really care. It's like, this isn't useful. I don't eat this. I don't like this. Too sweet, too salty, too whatever. And then today, I was just looking at stuff. Oh, I want to eat this bag of chips. No, I don't. But I just feel like grabbing it. It feels very creepy, and wait, this isn't under my control. And yet I haven't really, so I can't really stay on top of it without a lot of extra consciously telling myself that it's not me.
So the point is basically, like, I was trying to eliminate all the things that are not art related for depression. And I think that's very important if you are someone who's really depressed. And I guess that's kind of, I imagine that's my big audience. I imagine most people who... How could someone who's not depressed watch this or listen to this?
Yeah, listen to hours and hours and hours.
Oh my god, I get it, you're depressed. Just cheer up.
Just cheer up. But I think this is very, very common to be depressed in this day and age. Like, even psychologically speaking, depression is very, very prevalent nowadays. And I think it's for good reason that it's... Yeah. Like, on one hand, you have the food that's adding to it and the chemicals that are adding to it, because it's sort of like you're giving your body drugs that would otherwise cause a psychological effect. It's just you're taking them through the skin or digesting them in small amounts every day and stuff. And on the other hand, it's the culture seems to be such that it fuels depression, because what depression does is it makes you crave distraction, which in turns fuel an entire industry. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you can't not be depressed, because if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands instead of going to the movies. Or whatever.
I didn't get that at all.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I had this many years ago. Many years ago.
We'll get that reference. Who's gonna get it?
No one, of course. But
okay.
Nor should they. Anyway, so I had this, I guess, in the mid-2000s. In America, it was a pretty turbulent time. Nothing like now, I suppose. It's much worse. But at that time, it was pretty outrageous. So George Bush was president, and Iraq, people were going into Iraq and all this stuff. And I watched The Daily Show a lot with Jon Stewart. There was this comedy show called The Daily Show, which was like a satirical news show. I guess it's still going on, but I don't have a TV or anything, so I don't watch TV. But I was thinking about how this show is bad for people. And I liked it. Like, I watched it and I thought some of it was pretty funny. But the thing is, I started to think about what is happening. So it's a sequence of showing something outrageous. So you would see, okay, they would talk about something ridiculous, some story that is very, like, it makes you upset, people squandering money or screwing up the environment or screwing up the political system or whatever. And there's this reaction of anger, but that anger is then transformed into comedy. So there's a punchline and you laugh and you've sort of achieved catharsis, like it's done. And so what this did is sort of in a way inform you, upset you, but then make you laugh and you move on. And I thought, I suppose in the past what would have happened is people would have got informed and angry and then they wouldn't have the laughter. So the anger would build and then people would get angry enough to do something. There'd be a big change and it's like, no, we've got to turn it on its head. And then I'm not sure if this is true though, because I mean there was always satirical, like there's a newspapers,
sure, but they had different.
It's a bit of a different thing. And I don't know, it wasn't like I really went on some quest to screw the Daily Show or something. It's like, no, not at all. But it was just kind of thinking about the other side of things that you don't think about, like, could this thing that I like be bad in some way? Like maybe not bad overall, but just like, is there a negative side to this? And then it's like, okay, yeah. And I think about that a lot, and the conclusion I've come to is there is no perfect thing. There's no ideal society. There's no ideal anything, because there's always a negative that comes from it. And so, I mean, you could say ideal is just as good as it can be with as few negatives as possible, or as the negatives don't bother you that much. And it's like, okay, I guess there's that. But with everything, there's a cost to it. And when I think about what is the cost to people being constantly distracted, it seems pretty severe. So like the constantly, on Facebook or on Instagram or looking through Pinterest or just constantly distracted over and over again. There's no rest. There's no time when you're free. And it's like, well, what would that do to a person? And my initial gut reaction is, that would make someone pretty depressed, And then it's like, it would. It certainly would. If you are constantly subjected to things, you're, especially with advertisement or games or entertainment, when it's pretty refined in terms of psychology and like the science of how to keep people's attention is quite good. And so people know, like, okay, how do you make this faster? And even for myself, I found this trend of when I watch YouTube videos, I'm watching them at a higher and higher speed. It's like 1.25 is now pretty much normal because it's not fast enough. Like people aren't talking fast enough. There's not, hurry up and get it over with so I can get more information.
Even that thing you mentioned in the beginning about saving art and having folders and stuff. And for me, I just have one folder.
The Omni folder.
The Omni folder. But it seems to be really making you spend more time on sort of gathering or whatever and less time on reflecting. Because the amount of time that I spend, I go through the pictures every now and then. I move some on my phone and I'll review them when I'm idling and whatever. but I don't really spend that much time reflecting on what I've gathered and why I've gathered it. Like, when I'm getting it, I try to look at it and see, what am I getting this for? But it always just creates a bigger and bigger backlog of things that I later on want to study, but because it's getting so big, I'm less likely to want to.
Yeah.
So with collecting, so like the way I think about it, if you have an artist who endlessly collects the work of other artists, it feels like that person is suffocated.
I suppose to a point.
It's not really, well, when does this person have silence in their mind long enough to create their own thing?
For me, there's like a fear. If I don't save the images in every few days, then it's just gonna be a backlog. And there's going to be more and more, and I'm just going to have to go through more.
Isn't that very, very similar to those advertising campaigns? Like, oh, get it now, or otherwise you won't get it after Christmas, or the sale only...
Well, sure.
Like, what's going to happen? Realistically speaking, what would happen if you didn't save anything for a month?
I suppose it would mean I would have a lot to get through.
Why? Why is it a chore? Why do you have to get through it? What makes it such a necessity?
Okay, so...
What's it necessary for?
Alright, so one of the things is I like artists. Like, there are artists I like, and I'm curious about where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And what are they going to come out with? Are they improving? I kind of want to see their journey and follow them on their journey. And I also want to see cool artwork. So it's like, oh, that's cool. Okay, save it.
But would you talk to them every day or every time? Like, oh, what have you done now? What have you done now? What have you done now? Because that's the equivalent of it. It's like, if you saw a guy's work, or a girl's work, I guess, once a month, and you just reviewed their gallery. Like, all right, today is my day of looking at artists' galleries, and I can see how they've gone through a month. Because I feel like when I go through and scroll through an Instagram feed or a Facebook feed or whatever, you don't really see a continuum of what a person's done. You see a lot of snapshots of this person, that person, and it's very, very easy to lose your sense of time, which is what I was talking about in the beginning. Your timelines become crunched as if, okay, so a guy posts a picture of him being in Hawaii on the beach.
Yeah.
But to go there, realistically speaking, it's taken him like maybe a year to save up the money, to plan it, to get his bookings in order to whatever, and then he probably arrived, and he probably took a while. He didn't post it right away. He went and he had lunch. But everything of that is crunched for you, the viewer, into one, click like, okay, done.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, when you're creating, and even when you're studying to become an artist, these things take time, and it's become... I hadn't really understood it until I met you, and I had overheard conversations or had conversations on topics like, well, I want to be an artist in the next 6 months, or I'm going to be good in a year, or, oh my God, I'm 35 and it's too late for me. It's like, what happened? Where's your realistic timeline for things like this? It's like, there's no exposure to anything, which is why it's kind of retarded in a way, but you look at a tomato plant and you will know that it takes a few months until you actually get to eat the fruit of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty important lesson that most people don't get, is just seeing how long a thing takes to get to fruition. One of the things with the images I thought was helpful is, you know about this, of course, but I started looking through one artist's folder, and I just had them on, what's it called? Slideshow. So what I would do, instead of looking through a bunch of artists, and I still saved my images, but after I started, and this particular artist is called Maddie Blitz. I really like her work. She does a lot of like Guilty Gear work, but it's still kind of the same style, but I kind of prefer how she does it to the actual style, which is really rare. Because usually I'm on the side of like, oh, you're just an imitation of this person who's better than you. Whereas with her, it's like, oh, I kind of like your work better than the original. So anyway, I really like her work. I really like her style. So I just had it on a slideshow, and it was just going through all her images. And because I was able to see the different images, and it was one artist, and they were different, like they were done at different times, obviously. I was able to kind of see where she was, and then what she was learning, and how she was progressing as an artist. And then I was looking also at what does she have that I don't? Because when I look at her work, I suppose from the past few years, it still feels like it's way beyond me. I get pretty impressed by it in terms of like, wow, I couldn't do that. I don't know how you did that. That's really cool, but I don't understand. But if I go far back enough, there are things where it's like, okay, I'm kind of better than you at this point anyway, than most of the things. So what happened? Like, what is the thing that got you much further? And yeah, and that's what I was doing for a few days. And then I kind of, I guess, stopped for a while and started going back to my own thing. And okay, now what do I do? But I mean, my problem is I get too influenced by other artists, and then I start mirroring, which is not what I want to do. So
I've got two criticisms to that. First of all,
to what? Looking at a slideshow?
No, not looking at it. No, that's totally fine, I feel. But with saving images, like on one hand, I understand it. Okay, having a person's progression right in front of you and whatever. However, the rhythm and the urgency of your action of saving it doesn't feel very adequate, because on one hand, unless the person's the type of artist who will delete their early work off their gallery, their online, whatever, the work will still be there for you. And it's not the 90s anymore. We have, well, not in Princeton so much, but we have internet. So looking at a person's work doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself have to expose, especially with you, since your mind is so sticky and it like mirrors pretty much automatically. Expose yourself and sort of fragment your day, your psychological day, with noise. It's like, it might not be noise in the long run if you're looking at a slideshow and stuff, but sort of when you have a little bit of everything, somehow your day just feels like it's been busy, like, oh, there's no time, and then you're looking forward to resting more than...
I'm not actually following. Like, what is this in reference to?
Saving images regularly from an artist.
Okay, so this isn't about the slideshow thing.
No.
Okay, I still don't like. I don't get the point. Like, if you save images regularly, you're adding noise to your day.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, basically that. Okay. Basically, you're just creating an environment for yourself where you are trapped in a loop.
I suppose, but it doesn't take the whole day to be...
It doesn't take the whole day, sure, but it takes enough of your day that it's like, all right, now you don't have the mental space to, like, oh, you've been influenced by, oh, this person's better than me, oh, this person did this, maybe I should do this, oh, I remembered this, but maybe...
Well, it's not... I think if you focus on one artist over a period of days, it's not the same thing, because you're learning about... Specifically, you're trying to get something for yourself.
Yes.
I view it like a hunter who's...
I agree, but how much of your learning is actually put to use? Because if you were, all right, so I saw this thing today, and then I'm gonna incorporate it. I'm gonna assimilate this knowledge. But if it's just sort of like how people watch YouTube tutorials, but they're not really learning, but they feel like they need to watch this because they're gonna learn. It's like passive learning is not gonna amount to much.
Sure, but I'm not passive learning when I keep it on a slideshow.
That's because I'm not talking about the slideshow. I said that. That's a good idea.
I'm
just talking about the saving of the images, like, oh, having it as a routine. as
Oh,
such
okay.
a frequent habit.
What about if you have it as a habit, but you don't attach your own art to it? It's just like, for instance, you like art, you like looking at art, so you're just looking at art. You're ingesting something you like.
I agree, but that makes for a good consumer, not so much a good creator. Because, for example, if you were without internet, I don't know, influence, or if you were if you were just out in the boonies and had no access to other people's art, and you still wanted to have things that you like to look at, what would you do?
Make it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, all right, let me get my butt to work and make this sketch. Oh, do I like it like this? Oh, do I like it like that? Oh, whatever. It's like, it's usually not things you wouldn't come to yourself.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. There is a fear that I wouldn't.
That's what you're mentally alleviating with savings. Like, oh, if I know this because I saw it, because somebody handed me the knowledge, then that means...
guess. I remember I watched a Richard Schmidt DVD, and he was talking about burnt sienna and white, and how this combination creates good flesh tones. But this is knowledge passed down through generations, and it could take an entire lifetime to figure this out. And I was thinking, what? An entire lifetime? Not really, because it's not like you're gonna mix like a computer program where I must mix every color with every other color. You're gonna see patterns, and it's not that. Like I just kind of felt that, like, no, I'm pretty sure people could figure this out pretty. If you focused on it and you experiment, like today I'm going to experiment with colors. I'm just going to see what creates what, and probably figure it out maybe a couple weeks, not really a lifetime.
And alongside, you're going to figure out a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
That are going to help you.
So, actually, before the slideshow thing, what I was doing was I was looking at my work and I was trying to do that thing that I always do, which is take the thing to its fullest. So gesture, make the best gestures. And I know I like simplification. I know I like harmonizing things and combining shapes and simplifying it to its core components. However, the work I look at isn't really that. And so I started looking at Steven Silver's work, because I think he does simplification pretty well, or very well. And so I was looking at it, and like combining shapes and making them more gestural in one form and more designy, and it was cool. And I felt like, okay, I'm learning. And then it struck me that I guess I had seen like maybe a Maddie Bliss thing, and I was just thinking about how this is very disjointed, but I actually like it. And then it hit me that on every spectrum, the extremes tend to be very similar. Yeah. So if I really like things to be cohesive, maybe disjointed things also work. And there is in Maddie Blitz's work, there is a cohesion, of course, and there is gesture and stuff, but it's a lot more like each element within a form. Let's say a leg, there are more plane changes, whereas with a more cartoony thing, you might simplify an entire, maybe from the armpit all the way down to the foot would be one line, in a more, I guess, disjointed, I don't know exactly what to call it, but you would
hyper-jointed.
you would just break down each individual plane instead of simplifying it, and it still looks cool, and you can accentuate things. So it's pretty, my point is basically that in any extreme that you go to, there could be the opposite, and it can work just as well. And I've found this to be the case for almost anything anyone's ever told me in terms of art advice. Like, you should use guidelines, and guidelines will really help you. And then it's like, okay, so if guidelines would really help me and I should use guidelines, is it also true that if I don't use guidelines and that will also help me, I'll be fine? Yes. Use an eraser and a pencil and keep correcting your mistakes. Okay, that will help me to improve in a way, because I'll make sure I always achieve the right lines And over time, I'll get used to making the right lines, and I'll get rid of anything that's bad, and I'll get work done. Okay, don't do that and just use ink and never erase anything. Okay, that'll teach me discipline, and it'll both of them have good. They have qualities,
but they're all
strengths.
missing the purpose. Like, this is good, this is great, or what? It's like, oversimplification into basically one blob, like straight against curves, kind of like Steven Silver's thing. That's great for a purpose, for readability from a distance, from whatever, a certain standpoint. If it's for TV, it's ease of animation and stuff. Like, yes, it's great for that. Whereas with Maddie Blitzing, yes, it's great for what? For like, a sense of coolness, a sense of like, intricacy, dynamic stuff. Like, you've got more shapes, therefore you can make more things move in a picture. You can express different things.
Yeah.
Like, all of these things are good depending on what you need them for, or whether you need them at all. It's like, I can see a very nice, I don't know, just a very nice sports car.
Mm-hmm.
But do I want a sports car? Do I need a sports car? Am I going to drive a sports car? Like, these things are very, to me, they feel like pretty basic questions that some people kind of forget to ask themselves.
For me, it's not so much I forget to ask, it's that I don't have a readily available answer.
But it's never readily available, especially when you've lost touch with your previous states. Like, usually a kid, wow, I feel hunger, I'm gonna scream, and then I'm gonna get food. And then that doesn't really change much for quite a long time. Okay, this is very immediate. What do I want? What do I need? Do I like this? It's very primary, but when you have kids that don't really remember how to, do I like this? Like, wait, this isn't even a question. And for me, I guess I had a very strong sense of what I like when I was growing up, but like, what kind of, there were times when it didn't really matter much that I liked or I didn't like a thing when I was threatened or when I was under duress or whatever. It's like, when you have kids who grow up being under constant stress, under constant pressure, under constant distraction, and being told what's good and what's not, they sort of forget what they want, what makes them feel good, what makes them happy.
For me, I didn't really have that stress, but I didn't have any choice.
Really? You had no stress?
No, it wasn't that type of stress.
I don't know, it feels like being under physical threat and stuff would be that kind of stress.
In terms of not knowing what I liked?
Yeah. And then,
no, my thing was more like I didn't get a lot of things. Like, sure, there's the
I don't think it's just that, because you weren't exposed to that many things.
That's the thing. The exposure was limited.
There was a lot of talk about, what values are, what morals are, what genius is, what an artist is by people who knew nothing about art. Just the values were imparted by very ignorant people, and that is a lot of stress, especially for you, since you had a set of morals that conflicted with that. And you've carried that conflict well into adulthood.
Yeah, I think we're talking a lot about things that we haven't explained, so it's kind of hard to have a reference point. I'll explain a little bit about the genius thing. So, I've noticed this is not across the board, and this is certainly not true in Flavia's case, but in certain cultures, and perhaps even just in certain families or family groups, there are certain cultures, or maybe it's even dependent on socioeconomic status, but there's this hero worship thing. And in my particular environment, it was more like this idea of a genius. So a genius was someone that everyone looked up to. When I was young anyway, this is what it seemed like. A genius is someone who is good at something and everyone looks up to, and they sort of are forgiven for whatever eccentricities they have. It's just, oh yeah, they were violent, or they were a misogynist, but they were really great this, or they were really this, but they were really great at that. And to me, it felt like, well, I'm pretty different than other people, and I like that. And I like being one of a kind, and I like the idea of being a genius. With my culture, it was also sort of like a genius is someone who's born, like you're just born a genius, and like God gives you these talents or abilities, and then if you're gifted in a certain way, then you are this. And my thing was like, okay, well, I really want to be that. Now what? Okay, I want to be a genius. Am I? And I didn't know. I didn't think I was like the smartest person, so I didn't feel like I could have that. And it was sort of trying to figure out a way to fit this idea of what other people had built of this genius.
Yeah.
And so...
How old were you?
3? 4?
Okay, so you have a 3-year-old who's become preoccupied with fitting an idea that other people have of him.
Well, yeah, it was more like...
These are not the things a 3-year-old should be thinking of.
Does that mean I was a genius? Anyway, yeah, I would have these things where it's, okay, I'm smart, but am I this smart? And then when I started to be regularly confronted by people who were better than me, I think, because in the beginning of my life, I wasn't. When I was very young, I was probably the most athletic, the most intelligent in class, and I didn't have trouble with most things, like concepts I grasped faster than anyone else. And that was in England. And then when I came to Canada, it was only more so, because in Canada, the education system was like 2 or 3 years behind what we were doing in England. So there was this huge gap, and I never needed to do homework or study. I didn't even know what studying was. Like, oh, that's a thing people do. You study. It was, what? No, you just know, like the teacher says something and then you understand it and then that's it.
Then you go home.
Yeah, you go home. It's like, what do you need to study? Oh, do the homework. It's like, you mean the thing that you finish in class? Because there's plenty of time. It's like, no. And so when this ran out, when this, I don't know, advantage ran out because I didn't know how to study, and then the courses were getting more difficult. And in art, for instance, people were just better than me, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know they were putting in way more time into drawing than I was. I just thought, well, no, like a genius is born, and everything they do is better, and they just grow into that life. Like, it sounds so stupid now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier.
It really was that. I thought, like, okay, so by the time I'm 20, I'll probably be working for Marvel Comics, because that's what I read in a magazine, that someone was 16 and was working for Marvel. So maybe I'm not as smart as that. So maybe 20. There was no idea of you have to work. You have to put in effort. These are cultivated. These are grown. So that was really bad for me, this idea of genius and this idea that people are gifted. I think that's a terrible idea to propagate. I think people do have things that they have tendencies towards things. They have predispositions, advantages in certain areas for sure. But not think about
things in the fog.
To not think about work or studying as important or
I think
necessary.
the more you use your advantage as a kid, especially when learning, the more you rely on your advantage, the more you build up a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
what are you
because-
doing? You're using the fact that you can grasp concepts, but you're not really building up what you're weak at, which is...
Yeah, and it
Right.
leads to this crippling self-doubt and this feeling like, okay, I'm not doing well in my courses anymore.
And you don't know why.
I don't know why, and I'm
Don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, the people that weren't like, I guess when I was younger anyway, I had the beginner's luck thing. I was always good in the beginning, and then I wouldn't understand how the people who I was passing were now passing me. I didn't have stamina, and it's like, oh, I'm really fast out the gate, and then I slow down because I'm not studying, and they are studying, and I didn't even know that. I didn't know that some people were studying, or that some people even had tutors that were teaching them.
Oh yeah,
And then,
I didn't know that either until maybe 7th grade or 8th grade.
Oh, I didn't know that until grade 12. Yeah, so it was just like, how are you getting smarter when you didn't understand in the beginning? And then I just felt so stupid. I felt like a complete fraud.
Yeah, it seems like all of these lacks and all of this disadvantage makes your self-worth fluctuate very
you get
wildly.
the two ends.
Like,
Either,
am I nothing or am I everything?
Yeah, am I better than, am I this genius thing? And then in which case, I suppose...
But it's determined by nothing. Like, it's determined by what? It's just a thing. It's just the great metal hand in the sky.
Yeah. But it's a case of, okay, well, if I'm not this, then I must be really bad. But then there's this hope that maybe I am. Maybe if I can do something. And after I learned about what it really is, it's a certain amount of work, and you can have advantages in certain areas, but you can also make up for those advantages. Like, if you have disadvantages, you can make up for those. You can train yourself to have things. That was very...
You can be Rock Lee.
Yeah, but I guess I got obsessed with that then.
Yeah, because you put all your desperation of, I don't want to be the nothing, into, now I know the thing, I know that, but it's still like the recipe.
Controllable.
Yeah, but it's still the recipe, a recipe to the exclusion of everything else.
Yeah, because then I started ignoring what I was.
Yeah.
It's not important what you are, it's just important that you can learn, that you can improve.
Yeah.
And I think that too becomes a thing where people hear it a lot. Like, if they watch a lot of videos on YouTube or just listening to artists talk, there's often this, I did it and you can do it too. I did it and I wasn't the best and you can do it too. And it's really like, you get this sense of, oh, I could do it. Cool. I could do it. Could I really? Maybe it's possible. And what you don't really get is, they are super dedicated. Are you as dedicated?
On one hand. And on the other hand, they're not objective. Most of the time, most of the speeches from artists that I've seen are sort of, they think pretty little of themselves. Which means, like, they downplay their effort. They downplay the man hours they've put into their craft. And on the other hand, it doesn't seem subjectively like that big of a deal to them.
Yeah.
It's like, I did it. You could do it too. It's not a big deal, right? It's like,
yeah, that was kind of the when you saw my old sketchbooks and just the stack of them.
Yeah.
And it was like, I completely forgot that I'd done that many drawings. And
so we walk into a room and there's this huge stack of newsprint sketchbook. Like, it's too heavy to lift, so I had to like split it up into batches to move it, and so that I could look at it. And it's like, you did all of these, and you're saying like, I didn't do mine. Oh yeah, it doesn't. Like,
yeah, you kind of forget, and it's because the way I see it anyway, the times when you really go intense. So there were times when I was doing, 10 to 12. 13 hour, 14, like I did have the 15-hour days, the 20-hour days once in a while where I was just doing that. And then over a long period of time, I start to view that as that's when I was serious. So then it's like, okay, so I'm serious now, and it took me 6 months or 2 years or something to get a certain level of competency. But you kind of forget everything that came before.
Yeah, because your timeline gets crunched.
Yeah, it gets really, you start to think, but that part, I wasn't serious at that time. It doesn't count.
Yeah.
But it's still like, yeah, but that's still a lot of work.
Yeah.
That so yeah, it's pretty easy to lose perspective. And it's pretty hard to get perspective if you're starting out. Especially when you're looking at other people or listening to their stories or things like that. So
yeah, because even when you told your story, it's like, this is 30 plus years told in a couple of hours.
What's weird is when I tell my story, it sounds pretty exciting. But if you think about the exciting parts as the peaks of a mountain, the not exciting parts were the valleys, and those were huge. So what I kind of, like, I don't really remember that much because, again, my memory issues, but what I do have a sense of is just extreme boredom all the time, like long periods of nothing is happening. Doing the same thing every day for years almost. And it's very boring in my head. My story seems like the most boring thing ever. But when other people hear it, sometimes they comment that it sounds pretty exciting. It's like there were 2 years or a few years that were kind of exciting. But yeah, it's not the whole story.
Yeah, I think because lately I guess in the past decade or more, there's been such an easy access to people's stories or people's motivational speeches or people's sort of concentrated knowledge. You sort of, to learn this thing, it takes 30 minutes of watching a video. It's like, no, it doesn't. To assimilate it, it takes much, much longer. And because it takes 30 minutes from start to end, or however long it takes for a TED Talk or an art tutorial or whatever, you sort of feel like you're left with this feeling that you don't really know what the fuck you don't really know what you just learned or what you just heard, but you feel like you sort of know about it. You feel like you sort of have command over this knowledge, but then you don't really. And then you want to move on to the next thing. Maybe I don't know enough stuff. Maybe I need to learn more things. It's like, no, you need the time to practice it.
Yeah, but I do, because the thing is, I still do get stuff out of certain things.
Of course you're going to get stuff out of things, but are they the things that you will put in?
Yeah.
How much of it?
Well, okay.
Because if you were
I will say my specific examples, for instance. So, whenever I think about simplicity in design, if I watch a Keenan Lafferty video, I will remember that. So, there's he's got a YouTube channel called the KNKL Show, and I do learn from it. I do learn, design, and I think about that, and I try and implement it, and I suck at it, but whatever.
Okay.
And then Rake.
Okay.
When I watch Rake tutorials, I always get that reminds me about how to simplify the figure, and I kind of remember structure, and that's a helpful tip. And I suppose with Rake, it's more stuff I already know, but it's like he goes over it again, and it refreshes it for me.
Yes. Okay. So my question to you is, on account of the hours of watching these videos put together side by side or whatever, how much of these things would stick to your mind if you were actually practicing those things by doing the art itself? It's like...
But I do.
While you're watching the videos? No, you're not.
No, but after.
Yes, but how, okay, so I have watched 2 hours of a video, now I'm gonna do this for 4 hours. It's like, there's no...
I usually do it for a week.
I mean, put together in a...
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's like, because for example, if you're given a concept, if you go to somebody's lecture, or you go to a debate, or you, whatever, you've learned a new thing, you've acquired new knowledge, and then you go and you either reflect on it, or apply it, or incorporate it, or sort of make it your own. And I feel like the more the more things you watch, the less time you have to and the less energy you have to make the things with it. And the less you have in terms of discernment of what you need to complete the image that you want to make. Like, for example, you watch this video or this tutorial, and you watch Keenan, and you watch Rake, and you watch this other guy, and you watch that other guy, because, this bit is useful, this bit is useful, this bit is useful. And then, useful for what?
Well, that's the thing with the editing, because I got rid of a bunch of my subscriptions and I don't actually watch them, but that was the thing. I reduced it by a lot.
I'm sure that many of your viewers haven't really gotten...
Well, it takes a while to get to that point where you actually know who's helping you and who's not, because the reality is people have different approaches, and certain teachers work well with certain students.
Sure.
So,
but I think there's also the fear that, if you're not watching this, then you'll miss out.
Well, sure, and I had that. In fact, when I started my channel, and then for maybe like 3 or 4 years, I kind of prided myself on... I would subscribe to any artist that I found, and I would watch the videos, because I felt somehow like I'm learning about the community, and I'm learning, like I might learn something. But this is something I always had with art, because I didn't have instruction for most of the year. So it's, if there's any art, I've mentioned this, if there's anything on TV about art, if there's any book about art, I would just read, learn. I need to learn about art. I don't know anything. So there's that, but that was taken with other videos, but there weren't like tons of channels that I found at that time.
Yeah.
Like now it's impossible. Yeah. There's just no way. And there's too many good people who are, or at least there's a ton of people who are good, who may not be teaching, but it's not really like the teaching is that important. What I've seen is most of the art instruction is focused on showing off and then entertaining. It's more like entertainment. It's more entertainment with the disguise of being informative.
Yes, because otherwise you would feel too guilty as a viewer to be just looking at pure entertainment. Yeah. If you can cover it up with the guise of I'm learning, at least I'm learning. It's like 4 hours, fine, on YouTube. That's okay. I'll just watch this, watch that. I better get to everything. See, I'm learning, I'm doing my homework.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I don't think that's necessarily bad if it's not, like, let's say you're not trying to be a professional artist, you just like art. And you like being surrounded by art, and that's just your hobby or something. Yeah. You go to work, I've done my work, and then I go home and I watch art things because I'm interested in this thing. I suppose that's fine.
But it's very important that you know that and make that conscious.
Yeah.
Because if you make it conscious, even if it's unpleasant, I don't really, this is a hobby, this is a blow to my ego, I don't really want to be a concept artist. It's kind of like we've got voices in our heads with all the criticisms that might have been thrown at us at one given point. But if you make it conscious, on one hand, you have ownership of it now, which means whatever you build on it is going to be yours. Okay, so
what do you mean by make it conscious?
So for, let's say, a guy,
put yourself in the situation of a person who isn't that high level. Maybe they're intermediate level. They want to be professional.
Well, I am in that position, so yeah.
Yeah, but you're not quite ordinary in this way.
Okay, so if I was in that position, I would feel like, I feel this pressure, and I've said for so long that I want to be a professional concept artist, let's say, and I have heard that it's good to watch Fengzu, for example, and I religiously watch his videos because he is a concept artist and he does talk about it, and then I discover this other guy who's also a concept artist, and then I discover this other guy. So now 4 or 5 hours of my day are spent with what I'm thinking is researching concept art and bettering myself and arming myself with knowledge towards becoming a concept artist. But really deep down inside, I don't really want to put in the work. I don't really like the lifestyle. I just kind of want the benefits of it. I want to see nice concept art around me, and I want to talk to people about concept art and ideas and stuff. And I don't really want to be getting down and dirty and doing it. So on one hand, when I think about that consciously, my ego takes a hit. It's like, oh, what? I'm not going to be excellent, but this is cool. This is the cool thing to do. I mean, you mean I'm not really cool if I don't want this thing that is the pinnacle of today's artists.
Well, sometimes I think of it as it's just the least bad option. If you think about the careers around you, do I want to work in a service
You are not
industry?
ordinary either, though. So
yeah, but
you're
I
not
mean, if I'm kind of adjusting it to stories I've heard from other people, but like, oh, you look at the jobs around you and you see a concept artist, like, oh, you draw. Drawing's fun. I draw for fun. And then you make these cool images. Wow, you're designing worlds, you're making worlds, and I play video games, and you made that thing that is in that thing that I like, or I really like manga, and you drew the manga that is the thing that I like, and I like manga, and I like drawing manga, and you're that, and that's your job. So there's this association between, okay, I like this, and you do that thing that I like, therefore, I don't really want to do work if I can do something I like.
Of course, because then you have a lot of factors compounding. It's like, first of all, you have the admiration and looking up to your idol artist and his art and his creation and whatever. So you have the attachment to the IP, and then you have legitimacy. Oh, you do this for a living, therefore every adult in your life is sort of appeased. I do this as a job. This is a job. This is to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
This is whatever. And then it's your own avoidance of other more tedious whatever. So there's plenty of factors to draw you in. And then there's ego. Oh, you create worlds. This is very, I don't know, I've started to see this pattern even with people cosplaying and people sort of.
I see it a lot with the esports.
The esports, the cosplayers, this artist thing, and also the movies we tend to watch, or the pop culture movies, which I suppose
we tend
not to watch.
For most people.
Yeah, most people are exposed to this culture of superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been a trend, and not just superheroes per se, but most of the movies are sort of outbidding each other in terms of how much action is packed, or how much importance is packed, or how much drama is packed. And I feel like this genre of movie sort of disappeared, which was, subtlety in your daily life, richness in people's daily lives. And that value has sort of faded away from the public consciousness, whereas what's emphasized is you create worlds, you can change the world. And even in social campaigns and stuff, you can change the world, you can affect change, you can do this, this sort of hyper empowerment. But I feel like behind it stands a very strong sense of being powerless.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're hyper, super gonna cosplay Thor or whatever, and I'm gonna swing my hammer, and the rest of the 364 days of the year, I am feeling completely lost, completely depressed, completely lonely, completely misunderstood. It's like, but this one day of the year, I get to shine.
Yeah. I suppose that's part of it, yeah. I think about kind of like even charity where you give money to a cause and you've done your part, as opposed to, I suppose, the slow version of that is I really care. Like, let's say it was a charity to save animals, and like, I really care about animals. Okay, I'm gonna be a vet, so I have to go to school, and I'm gonna work this many years, and I'm gonna actually save animals, as opposed to I'm gonna donate to this cause, which helps, which I still think is fine. But I get this, or protesting instead of becoming a politician, you join a protest, and it's a quick way through it.
Yeah, I feel like people go home, especially given Romania's past couple of years or few years with their protests and stuff. I feel like a lot of the people going to the protest were coming back home with a very
in Romania.
Yeah, in Romania.
Yeah, you just start talking. Given Romania's protests history.
Yeah. So a lot of people were going back home very pleased with themselves, as if something had happened. And then you look at the news, the official results of their, I don't know, agitation were, well, the law got passed anyway. Well, this guy got out of jail anyway. But people were very, kind of like what you were saying with The Daily Show.
Yeah, you get this false sense of I'm doing something, I'm making a difference, or I'm part of it, or just belonging. I guess it's more of a sense of belonging and groupthink and tribalism, and you get to express things. I think that's more of it.
None of these things are inherently bad or anything. They're all necessary.
An opinion, but yeah.
I think they're all necessary.
Okay.
I think they're all necessary for a person's base functioning.
Okay.
Because if you don't have expression, if you don't have, you're gonna feel trapped. You're gonna feel in a way or another. You're gonna need to express what's going on inside you, because we are social animals. However, the way then how easy it's made to express things in a particular avenue, in a particular fashion, with certain people, with certain lineups at the gate, with certain taxes, with certain affiliations and stuff. It's very, we're all kind of getting pushed in one direction only. Yeah.
So how does this relate back to the art thing?
Well, it's the same with art, because it's sort of very easy to be wrapped up in concept art, the idea of concept art. I'm gonna not cosplay as Thor, but I'm gonna be the next Craig Mullins or whatever. Just these idols, the creation of these idols in art, as with other things, I suppose, with other areas. So you aspire to be that person instead of, I just want to make this thing. I just want to create my art. Okay, so about solutions then, what would you say is the solution to this? I guess my solution to this, if I said it, saying it would sound very naggy, but it's pretty much limit your internet usage. Very, if you can't do it, if you can't go a week without it, fine, but make a time frame for it. Once a week, I will spend 4 hours just browsing the internet, catching up on my things, downloading whatever I want to download and stuff like that. Secondly, I guess this is just my personal experience, and I don't know how easy it is to do, but I guess get seeds and watch a plant grow for a season. I would suggest getting a plant that you can actually eat, because it creates an association that's very... I think when it comes to this, you're doing the thing you told other people about, with me with the art. What? You're forgetting how much you actually know. I would agree with you on that, but on the other hand, I have been going through videos, there is a lot of information that you can use in a very targeted way through the internet. Just watch YouTube videos on plants. Not watch YouTube videos on plants, because I find that watching video tutorials on most topics is very time consuming and not really the easiest way to get information. What I would do is I would look up articles and alright, you'll have bullet point lists and stuff. And even, for example, let's say you'll get 2 pots and you'll plant green peppers in one, and you'll plant basil or oregano or something in the other one. And you look up, what temperature do I need to have these plants at? How much light do they need? Do I have cats? Because cats tend to dig up plant pots. So, they need to be out of reach. Do I have kids? Because kids need to be away from most plant pots. But it's not that time heavy. And you will get to see a thing happen, but very slowly, which kind of reminds you that things don't need to happen every single waking hour, every single day, a new piece, sort of takes you a bit out of the rat race. And then in terms of, I guess, social media is very tricky. Because on one hand, if you're using it sort of with my pet portraits, pretty much all the people that commission me, I talk to through on Facebook. So there is that, and I know a lot of other artists are getting work through Facebook, so I'm not saying just ditch your... But if you're an artist and you really, really feel like, well, this is my job and whatever, don't just use it as an excuse for, well, I might as well, maybe I'll look through, maybe I'll find something useful. Just make a page, make a page and keep it, sort of limit things, sort of design specific roles or redesign specific roles for everything. It's not good if you really are attracted by items or art or opportunities. Well, this might be good on a rainy day. I feel like this is a really, really slippery slope. Maybe I'll need it someday. It's like, no, do I really, really need it? And I feel like if you can get yourself to the point where you're consistently asking yourself and you get into this habit of, do I really need this? Is this going to be good for me? What am I going to use this for? And if you acquire new knowledge, if you watch a tutorial, go and practice it. Go and apply it. Don't watch a tutorial and then watch another one and then watch another one. Do not string them together. Mm-hmm. You will just lose knowledge. You will feel like you got something, and then on the other hand, you won't have much to show for it.
Yeah. I guess for me, my advice would be, like, don't have the internet for a while. Like, yeah. It's surprising how it teaches you, especially after like a week, it teaches you how, oh, I don't need this much stuff as I thought I did. And then on the other hand, it's trust that you can figure things out. And I think this is something a lot of people kind of have forgotten, is that they actually, like, this is something I forget all the time, that I can figure things out.
Yes.
And that sometimes it's like, oh, you look at something like, I don't know, as an example, how to draw fabric. And it's like, okay, so I got to look for a tutorial on how to draw fabric, instead of thinking of fabric is a thing that exists in real life. You can look at it. You can observe the human and how he wears the fabric. Look at this woman. She is wearing a dress. Note how the fabric folds
towards the ground.
Yes. This is like those fashion things you watch where they're all doing crazy things.
Yeah, I've on the other hand, I've observed something with myself. I don't know how many people this would be helpful for, but what I've been doing is I've just been sort of trimming what I watch and shifting it more like away from recipes or tutorials or educational stuff to maybe there's a time period that I really like, or I like old-timey 17th century, 18th century things. And on one hand, I like learning things, so I am drawn to documentaries and stuff like that. But while I'm watching those documentaries, I have my sketchbook with me, and I will make sure that I'm actually taking some visual notes, that the knowledge, when you practice knowledge, it's like, so the hierarchy goes, on the lowest tier is when you see things or hear things. On top of that, more effective is when you see and hear things at the same time. And then when you see things, hear things, and say them at the same time, repeat them. And then the most efficient form of learning is when you see things, you hear them, you repeat them back, and you do them. So if you actually make sure that you are practicing, or I don't know, I guess just replicating or whatever, the things you're immersing yourself in. Don't just be immersed in it because you'll drown.
Yeah, I knew this mouse, and he said the most effective form of learning was the electric shock.
Yeah, but what art did he make?
All over the floor, man. It was all over the floor. It was on the walls. It was everywhere. It was abstract Jackson Pollock, all in brown, but it was... Yeah. All right. Well, I think I think that's one last thing. It's kind of related to what you were saying, but the pruning thing I think is very important. So basically, what you do is if you're the type of person who's collecting a thing, try to go one step further. And I tried this, and it was actually pretty helpful. Where I decided I would make some prints of art I liked to put on the walls, and I realized I think we only had enough ink or something for like 10 prints. So I thought, okay, I gotta reduce this to 10. Okay, let me just pick my 10 favorite images. So I took like, I guess 100 images that I liked, and then within those I started cropping them and thinking like, which one do I like more than this? And I like this one, but I like this one more, and kind of actually putting thoughts back into the work where it's not this passive, I see an image, I kind of like it, I save it, or this artist that I follow made an image, so I'm just going to save it, or I guess now people pin it or whatever.
It's so easy to just...
but rather make it active. Yeah. So, what do you really like? And then out of this, what part of it do you really like? And once you start to really narrow it down, if you have problems in figuring out what you like I do, because probably you're normal and you don't, but if you're messed up, then this can help, I think, to really hone it down, like specifically what do I like. One of the, I guess I was like in my early 20s. It doesn't matter that I was in my early 20s, but anyway, I talked to an artist, Justin Ogilvie, and he had me tell him what art I liked, but then when I described it, I wasn't allowed to just say like it's cool. Like he would ask, why do you like it? And then my initial thing at that time was to say, oh no, I think it's pretty cool. And then like no, explain what it is you like about it. And that was actually pretty hard. It was pretty difficult at the time to actually like, what do I actually like about it? And then I was noticing things like, I like how soft the values are, but then you have like this punch of more contrasty value. And then it was, I verbalized a thing I can actually put into my own work. I think that can help. But otherwise, I think that's the end for this month.
Yeah. Grow a tomato. Save your life.
Yeah. Grow a tomato. All right. So thanks, Flavia, for keeping me company.
Random.
And thanks to all you listeners.
All three of them who made it this far.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.